Welcome everybody to today's event, Women in Power and Politics, Breaking the Bias. Today's event is part of the Gender Network's series of events this week for International Women's Day, which was of course yesterday. I'd like to say a special warm welcome to our colleagues from Metropolitan, Thames Valley Housing and Catalyst, who are also joining us here today. And I'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. So this event is being recorded. And for Peabody staff, it will be available with the whole series of our International Women's Day events on Workplace afterwards. We'll keep you posted with that and send out an email to let you all know when it's gone live. Today's event is a panel discussion with our two brilliant speakers, Geeta, Nanda, OBE, and the Worshipful, the Mayor, Councillor Elizabeth Baptiste of Waltham Forest. We're so thrilled to be having them both here today. I'll be kicking things off with a few questions and then we'll be opening it all out to the floor, and we really encourage all of your questions. Please pop your questions in the Q&A box and any comments or links you'd like to share with your colleagues in the comment box as well. But before we do get started with the questions, the panellists get to have a little bit of a break because we're going to do some poll questions for everyone to have a think about and start the conversation. So the first poll question will appear on your screen now. So question number 1, as of January 2021, how many countries in the world have never had a woman head of state? And these questions have come from the World Economic Forum. So it's either 45, 63 or 81. And you just tick your answer and then press the submit box. And then when we've had a few responses, we will find out what people have thought. 76% of people were correct. It is in fact 81 countries. So question number 2. At the beginning of 2022, so this year, how many countries were led by women? Is it 14, 26, or 35? If either of our panelists did want to reveal their guess, they're very welcome to.
I guess 14.
Correct, along with most of our audience members as well. So 84% of you got that right. It is in fact 14 countries. At this current rate of progression, the World Economic Forum estimates that it will take 145.5 years to attain gender parity in politics, which is quite a scary thought, I think. And now we'll go on to question number 3, which addresses our leadership side of the discussion today. Question number 1, as of November 2021, how many UK FTSE 100 companies were led by women? Is it 25, 2 or 9? So out of the 100 biggest companies listed in the London Stock Exchange, how many of them were led by women? Keep your answers coming, and then we will find out. Bit of a mix, slightly more of a mixed bag this time, but it's correct. It was 61% of, 61% of you were correct. It's 9 companies in the FTSE 100 that are led by women. And then the final question in our poll is, what percentage of UK FTSE 100 board positions are held by women? And this is as of February this year. Is it 12%, 40% or 22%? Madam Mayor, what are you going for on this one?
I think this one I'm just going to guess because I'm not sure. I've gone for 22%, but it's probably 40.
So Oh, actually, so the correct answer is 40%, which 6% of people guessed right. So yes, probably slightly more than people might have been expecting. So the UK has actually climbed to second in the international rankings for women's representation on board at FTSE 100 level. So new government data shows that nearly 40% of UK FTSE 100 board positions are now held by women, and that's compared to 12.5% just 10 years ago. In terms of women CEOs in the FTSE 100, there is now a new initiative called 25 by 25, which aims to tackle this lack of representation. And the campaign wants 25 female CEOs in the FTSE 100 companies by 2025. Okay, so enough of the questions, and now on to the main discussion. It's now time to go over to our panellists. Geeta, would you be able to introduce yourself, your current role, and explain why you were interested to join us today?
Thank you, Ellie. If anybody heard, that was my smoke alarm going off in the middle of that. It was just making this horrendous noise, so apologies. It was my son who burnt his cheese toast. So, but all is good is in here. So yeah, so I'm Geeta Nanda, and I'm the Chief Executive of Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing Association. And I have been Chief Executive for sort of 9.5 years at Thames Valley, and then a year at Metropolitan before it merged, and sort of 3.5 years post-merger for the Metropolitan Thames Valley. So quite a long time. I've gone grey in that time, all sorts of things. So but it's been sort of great opportunity, and I wanted to be here today because I think it's a really important time for us to be talking about women in leadership positions. Everybody sort of feels like, you know, social housing's got it sussed, it's got, you know, a lot more women in those positions, but I don't think that is inevitably the case. And I think it would be, you know, obviously having Elizabeth here as well was a real honour to be on the panel with her. So yeah, very interested in our discussion.
Thank you. And Madame Mayor, can I go over to you?
Yes, so my name is, my full title is the Worshipful of the Mayor, Councillor Elizabeth Baptiste. And I've been a councillor for 4 years now. Actually, I was elected in 2018. But prior to that, I worked in higher education. Spent about 18 years, I think, yeah, in higher education. Worked for a wonderful university, the University of Westminster. And I'm here, I really wanted to be here today because I just want to show other women that it's never too late, yeah, to do what you want to do. Doesn't matter how old you are or your background, it's never too late. And I am an example of that. And that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for your time, because we really appreciate that you've got very busy schedules and you've taken time to join the discussion. So I'm going to kick off with my first question, and it's for either and both of you. What, if any, do you think are the most pressing systemic biases faced by women working in politics and in positions of leadership? So what are the main systemic biases that you think women face? And
yeah, I'm happy to kick off. Is that okay, Geeta? Yeah, okay. So I think I listed probably about, there's so many things that I could talk about, but I thought I'm just going to perhaps list 5 things that stands out to me. So one of them is unconscious bias. 2 is about flexible working. 3, equal pay. 4, leadership positions, or the lack of women in leadership positions, especially BAME women, that's underrepresented in leadership positions. And of course, I also wanted to mention LGBT plus women, yeah, and that lack of awareness. So I think that, yeah, I'll leave it at that. These are the 5 things I think that stands out to me. There are others, but those things definitely, I think, is pressing in terms of biases that women face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, adding to that, really sort of agree with those points, but adding to that, I think one of the things is leadership qualities. So there's an expectation of women leaders being soft. There's an expectation that women leaders are, you know, not decisive decision makers, that, you know, that they are different to men in terms of qualities. And I think one of the things I've really seen in my career is that when housing associations have a rocky time, you know, when there are lots of headwinds and financially there are lots of issues coming our way, you see more men in CEO roles than you do women. And when things are in a different sort of position, when they're, you know, when they're calm and the, you know, you don't have the same headwinds and it's a kind of favourable, you see more women. And it's almost like, you know, men are seen as having the qualities to take organisations through tough financial decisions or tough decisions. And I kind of feel like those kind of leadership qualities, you know, the women are seen as sort of different in their abilities. So sort of not just some of those things that Elizabeth talked about, but yeah, some of those quality things. And I think, I suppose, adding to that as well as connections, you know, networks are everything. We've seen that a lot, and I think women are so much better at forming connections and networks, but you have to have the seniority and the power really for some of that to become more meaningful. So I think, you know, it's so much better than it was, and you know, there's been so much progress, but I think that you know, networks are really, really important, because it's that, you know, when times are tough, people go back to safety, and safety also links to the networks that people have and who you know, and you know, how do you feel safe for your organisation or for the work that you do. So I think sort of networks are really sort of important, and that balance of family relationships, etc. So sort of picking up on some of what was said, you know, that you know, the family responsibilities and women taking on those family responsibilities, whether that's children, whether that's, you know, old parents, you know, older people who need support as time goes on, etc. It's that sort of responsibility, or feeling of responsibility, and expectation of responsibility as well on women.
Thank you both. I think a lot of the issues you've mentioned also came up in our Gender Network previous quarterly meeting, and flexible working was definitely one of those big issues that came up. I wondered, have you seen any good practice around flexible working, and not necessarily just from a policy point of view, but how do you shift attitudes to make flexible working for both, well, for all carers more accessible, and how do you embed that into a work culture?
Well, I think you know, what COVID has shown, and you know, what we've come through this situation where people have worked more flexibly, is that men actually appreciate that flexible working as much as women. You know, you've seen so much more men talk about the time that they've had with their families through this time, and you know, the quality of that, which has sort of changed their lives as well. So I think getting men to fight for and talk about flexibility and wanting that is really important, because then it's not just seen as a woman's issue, it's seen as an issue, you know, which is sort of greater than that. And so I think now is the moment really, because everybody is thinking, yes, of course, there's very important businesses, we've just come through a really difficult time, and so we've got to really focus on getting everything working again as organisations and meeting those sort of customer needs. But at the same time, people are demanding more flexibility, and they're demanding sort of a change in working practice. So getting that balance right, it doesn't mean it all comes in one go. I think you have to kind of get your services up and running, and then you can sort of think about that flexibility. But it's important to really seize the moment and, you know, think about this now, because it's for all voices that are coming at it.
Yeah,
I just want to add that, you know, on the one hand, you can say that COVID, this pandemic, has been maybe a blessing in disguise, And the reason why I say that is because prior to the pandemic, when you talked about flexible working or working from home, it was always the senior management who had that position. Yep. But you, as the ordinary, junior member of staff, you've got to be in the office 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 or whatever it is. Yeah? So that the flexibility for those junior members of staff was either your 9 to 5, your 10 to 6, or your 8 to 4. But really, let's be honest, it was the senior management who had that opportunity to work from home. But obviously, since the pandemic, that has changed. Yeah, and that's why I'm bringing in this blessing in disguise. And I think going forward, it's a case of organizations switching to focus on productivity and results. Yeah, so that we can all benefit from this flexible working system.
And on that as well, so I think it's really interesting to see this as possibly a watershed moment for flexible working. Do you have any fears about if it is predominantly more women taking up opportunities to work from home? Do you have any fears about what imbalances that could then create, and how would we navigate that as part of this shift towards combination of office and work from home?
I mean, I think the sort of point that Elizabeth made around, sort of lower paid workers versus more senior. I mean, a lot of those frontline workers are the ones that have, they've been working in the care homes, they've been working in, London transport, working in shops, etc. So they haven't had as much flexibility. And I suppose in our organisation, in the sort of care and support, I'm sure it's the same for Peabody, you've got many more women in that profession. And so there's an inherent fairness issue that you talk about, is that if you've got people who are more out community based, I'm not talking about accounts inputting people or certain roles which are again lower paid but are more office based. So I think it's more complicated. It is really around who are your community facing roles, or the people who've gone out and worked in the NHS. There's a whole raft of people that are maintenance operatives there's more men than women in those roles. So I think it's much more around office based versus sort of customer facing roles, and what flexibility is going to be you're able to have in those different types of roles. And actually, sometimes with seniority here, that those senior people need to be more in the office to support the people who are working, and show that they have that support. So I think it's a more sophisticated sort of horizon now that we need to think about. And I don't think it's going to be men versus women. I think it's going to be more around the type of roles and fairness in terms of people's costs if they're still commuting every day versus those who've got the flexibility of work from home. So I think it's just going to be a lot more complicated, and therefore I don't really have that worry that it's men versus women. I think it's a different kind of complexity there.
I have to echo that. I don't have the concern about male versus female, but my major concern is that a lot of those women who are now in that position to have the opportunity to work from home are likely to be forgotten, because a lot of the business, a lot of the networking is done in the workplace. Yeah. And so my concern is that a lot of those women who now have the opportunity to work from home, we just have to be mindful that we should not forget them. Yeah. In terms of promotion, in terms of training. Yeah. We mustn't forget those things, because it will be at the detriment to those women if we forget them. Yeah.
That actually relates to a question that just came through around possible missed networking opportunities for those people working at home, and those in-person opportunities. So thank you, kind of answered that one before we got to it. So The theme of it, which I think I forgot to mention at the beginning, and I apologise, but the theme for International Women's Day 2022 is breaking the bias. So I wondered if, reflecting on your careers to date, what biases, if any, have you experienced, and what effect do you think this has had on the paths that you've taken?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm happy to go first, if that's all right. Yeah. I think when I first became, well, I suppose a senior member of staff and then a chief executive, I was very young, and there was a lot of assumptions made. I think all the way as I was sort of climbing the ladder, or whatever you want to call it, as I got into more senior positions, there were a lot of assumptions made around your ability because of age, and also being an Indian woman, lots of assumptions made around your ability to be a strong and act in a strong, I use that word strong because it was very much around, have you got the mental but sort of physical presence really to be able to deal with a lot of things, and I found that combination of youth and also kind of being an Indian woman, as you there was an assumption about being meek, about not being able to face sort of difficult things, and therefore you have to sort of overcompensate, and you have to overcompensate in areas where people think you are weaker, or where their assumptions are that you're weaker. So you can't, there are certain things you can't let slip. So as a, so sort of, it's almost like there's an assumption that you can be good at the people, but you can't be good at the money, or because there's all of that. So you have to be really strong on the finances, and you have to overcompensate a lot in terms of areas that people don't, until you get your confidence. And I think that's the thing with age, isn't it? You kind of get to a point where you gain that confidence, but as you're going up the into different positions, different organizations, you're first seen as this, you're first seen as your face, you're first seen as your age, or whatever it is, and you're not seen for who you are, and you have to overcompensate in terms of areas to be able to be seen as being competent in all areas of what you do. And then I think you gather people who support you, and that's what I found most beneficial all the way through my workplace, is having some amazing support from people who want you to succeed and who've got your back. And I think or your support group or whatever. And I think so important really for a lot of women is knowing that there are people who are there encouraging them, who support them, and and have that base of people who find them credible, because if they find you credible, then they're going to be credible. So I think you're always looking for support, you're always looking for allies, you're always looking at where are the, rather than a lot of men who think I can do most of this, you're always looking at your areas of weakness or perceived weakness and trying to bolster yourself in terms of those areas. And I think that's one of the things I really found.
Thank you. I think that would probably be really relatable to a lot of people, the idea of overcompensating, where you might be other people's biases might perceive you to be weaker. Madame Mayor, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just want to get, I suppose, maybe a little bit personal, and I don't mind, obviously it's been recorded, but I just, reflecting on myself, if I had to write a letter to my younger self, it will be, do not be afraid, do not be afraid. Because I spent a lot of years questioning my ability. And guess what? I always had it in me, but there was something that was just holding me back. Yeah. And it's because, okay, you have children, And so you think, well, I can't leave this job, or I can't do this because I've got to think about the child, my daughter, you know, at school or whatever. So yeah, so it's a case of, you know, looking back, yeah, I felt I was vulnerable. Yeah, looking back, I absolutely was vulnerable. And because of that vulnerability, although I know within me that I can do so much, and you know, there's that old saying, the world is your oyster. Well, it is. But hey, if there isn't somebody there to guide you, you're just going to be in your own little bubble and you just don't know what to do. And the years obviously passes and leave you behind. Yeah. But what I would say is sometimes as women, we are our worst own enemy. Yeah. Because we don't support one another. Not all women support one another. And that could be because of their own insecurities or fears. Yeah. Because often it is the men that we have to turn to, which is, hey, because they're the ones in the power anyway. So we have to turn to those men to guide us. But I think as women, we need to not be afraid to ask the questions. Continually ask the questions. So in my experience, in terms of my career to date, if I could, you know, if I'm a young person now, it would be the case of, don't be afraid, ask the question. Yeah. If there's an HR director there, if there's the director or whatever, if Geeta is there, go and speak to Geeta. Geeta, can you please sponsor me? Yeah. Because Geeta is either going to say yes or no. And if she says yes, that would be the best thing that could ever happen to you. She can't promise you the world, but the one thing that she will do is to help you, to mold you to get to where you need to be if you want to be following in her or somebody else's footsteps.
I think one of the other things is that often you find, and I think a lot of women will find that, is that people talk over you, or you say something and somebody else says it in a different way and they get listened to and you don't get listened to. And I found that so much in my career. And I thought, what, am I not expressing myself clearly enough? Is it, you know, what am I doing wrong? And so now, particularly if I'm in meetings and I can see a woman's not able to get in, or she's, you know, I always invite her in and I always reiterate her point, you know, so it may be, particularly in those kind of environments where it's mainly men and, you know, a few women. So there are lots of things we can all do in those sort of situations where we commonly hear that, don't we? Nobody hears me. I'm not, you know, I'm not talking out. There are little things we can do that gives people confidence, you know, just support each other and make sure if somebody's feeling vulnerable, you know, understand that and help them on their way.
I think that all of the points you've raised also really link to the fact that we've put the details of how to join the agender group at Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing and the gender network at Peabody, because those are arenas where you might connect with colleagues that you might not otherwise work with, who could be your allies, who could be your support network, especially at work and in a professional environment. So yeah, we really encourage everybody to join those groups and take part in the workshops and events that are put on. We've actually had a lot of questions come in, so I'm going to go to some of these on the Q&A. One person's put, a lot of Geeta's experience resonates with me. I wondered how you have managed your own well-being at times when you felt that you were overcompensating or dealing with imposter syndrome / feeling that others doubt your ability.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I think I did that whole thing of trying to be perfect for everybody. You know, I did that whole thing of at home, making sure I was doing everything with the kids, trying to be a good wife, be a good daughter, you know, and I remember sort of hardly sleeping when the, you know, kids were young, because I was desperately trying to do everything. And I don't, you know, one, it wasn't good for me, and one, it isn't good for anybody else. But I thought if I worked harder and I was present, and I mean, of course, you know, times have changed, you can be present in different ways now, but if I just do all of this, then I'll be able to keep everybody happy. And it was that feeling, I've got to keep everybody happy, I've got to be good for everything and do everything. And I don't think that's good for you. So I think now it's really around what is most important to you, and you have to really focus on that. And you know, there are, and you don't have to go to everything. I used to go to everything and make sure I networked with everyone and did everything, you know, and I look back and I think, what a waste of time that was. I did, you know, too much. But there are times in your life you do need to do that. You do need to, you know, go out there and because you think, right, this is really important. But I think it's just looking after yourself is important. It's about also having time for yourself and making sure you have people that can support you in whatever way. And I think that's really important for your own well-being. Don't feel you have to do everything. Don't feel you have to do everything all the time. Choose what you do, make sure it is important, and you come back and you don't think, well, that was a waste of an hour of my time or an evening of my time. Make sure you sort of really think, is this important, or is it just somebody else telling me it's important?
I'm sure that Madame Mayor, that probably relates to yourself as well. I'm guessing you'd get invited to a lot of things in your current role.
I do. One of the things, I think when I first became the mayor, I used to fake it until I faked it a lot of the time. Until it was about 3 months ago, I was invited to an event. So I'm not going to name any names, but I was invited to an event. It was myself as the female mayor, and it was another mayor, male from another borough. And we were both at this event. It was a musical event, and he had to leave early for something else. And one of the people in the event came up to me and said, "No disrespect, but are you sure you know what you're doing?" yeah. So, do you know what I mean? And yeah, and it was a case of, my God, you know, what do I say to that? Now, the own Elizabeth would have been, do you know what I mean? But I simply just turned around and I said, well, I haven't been to this event before, but trust me, I have done several of these events across the borough. Yeah. So that's how, but you know, it's a case of learning as you go along, isn't it? Yeah. But these are the kind of things that you have to deal with, you know, on a regular basis. But yeah, so now I've learned, rather than faking it or being at the beck and call to everybody, I pace it. I've now learned to pace it, because as Geeta said, you have to start asking the questions. Is this really worth my time? Do I really need to be there? Why? Because I'm Black and female, I'm the mayor? No, you don't have to do that. There are other priorities, yeah? But initially, when you start off, it doesn't matter what it is, you feel that you want to do everything, but it comes a time when you have to step back and say, no, let me review this and what is really relevant here. So yeah.
Thank you. And then we've got another question that's come in, which is, what's the most challenging thing about being a CEO of a housing association? So that one be for you, Geeta.
I think the most challenging thing is that you have quite a wide variety. You have a big remit. And I always say whichever route you come up through, you lose that knowledge pretty quickly once you're the CEO. So you don't actually know anything anymore, you know, and you're relying on everyone else to be able to deliver what you need to deliver for the organisation. And so you have to have a lot of trust in your team. Now, I'm sure this is true for everybody, really, but because it's not your discipline, you know, you can have finance and development and property and how, you know, you've got very, very different disciplines, whatever, and you can't have the knowledge of all of it. You do rely on that. It's that, and it's also with the board, because you then have a board, I'm sure it's counsellors, you know, you have a board with very different views and again, very different disciplines, and they can come at the discussion or the decision in hundreds of different ways. And so it's being able to manage upwards to the board and downwards to your team to deliver what you need to deliver. So it's not like you have one boss, of course you have your chair, but you have a whole board of people, and then you have a team which isn't sort of one discipline or area. There are many, so you have to kind of keep on top of a whole range of things that are happening in all those different disciplines. And it's just being able to sort of know through all of that, all these people with all their different demands, whether they're the board or your team, what the most important things are to focus on, and how do you sort of deliver on that and keep the focus for the organisation. So I say that's sort of one of the most challenging things.
Yeah, lots of competing demands and lots of different areas of service delivery. So this one is for you, Madame Mayor, and it's: what steps would you advise someone who is interested in being a local counsellor? So how do you even go about that process? And yeah, where do you start? It'd be great to know.
Yeah, so I think I said earlier on, much earlier on, that my background is obviously higher education. So that's where I'm coming from. But whilst I was in higher education, I was very heavily involved in my union, the union that supported support staff. And with the union, you get you're exposed to lots of training. You're exposed to employee engagement, employee development, employment law, the works. And so that's where that passion developed. And obviously I learned about politics. And so that's where it started. But what I would advise is to get involved in your local community, yeah? Because when you become a counsellor, that is one of the key things that you're going to need to develop or to know about, is the residents in your community and the various groups. So if you have that first-hand knowledge of your various community groups where you live, that's a foot in. But of course, for me, it was my union background. That's where it started from. And so I was able to transfer those skills that I developed from the union into my counsellor role.
Thank you. And what would you say is the biggest challenge as a local counsellor? How do you balance it? Yeah,
the biggest challenge as a local counsellor, without getting too political, but I mean, obviously most people are aware that the two biggest political parties are obviously the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. Now, the ward that I represent, it has 2 Conservative councillors and I'm the only Labour councillor. So that in itself is a challenge, yeah? But one of the bonuses for me, I guess, is it's because it's a Labour-run council. It's a Labour-run council, so therefore, you know, I have lots of maybe knowledge, information, yeah? And the residents tend to come to me to get a lot of their casework done because I'm a Labour councillor, yeah. Mm-hmm. But that in itself is a challenge because you're bombarded on a regular, every day with casework. So again, you need to have that skill, because when the residents come to you and they're complaining, it could be for something very simple about their bins not being emptied. You've got to take that seriously, yeah? Because in their mind or in their view, they're paying their council tax. And so therefore, why isn't my bin been emptied? Mm. Right.
Thank you. I think it's a really interesting insight, because it's not often that you get to ask people in political positions like that what the day job's like and how you get into it, and how we get better representation in those roles as well. So someone else has asked that they're interested to see how many have joined the session today, and in particular the percentage of men. So we've got 60 people on the call, so thank you very much to everyone that's joined from all the different organisations, sorry. And the vast majority of the people on the call, I think, are women. So that speaks to what Geeta was talking to earlier about how important it is that male allies speak up around issues like flexible working. And at the Gender Network, we really encourage all genders to join, and we want to provide a platform for everybody. Somebody else has asked, do you see the culture of alpha males dissipating at senior level? Do you still, sorry, it's jumping around a little bit. Do you still come across women trying to fit into that mold? And I think that would be for both panelists.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on a board and it's a, you know, it's a PLC board, it's property, and it's so it's a REIT, and it is all men, and they all call me young, so you can guess what age they are, and the whole senior team is all male as well. And I was on a board previously which was the same, all male senior team. It was a FTSE 250, and it was all. So I found in that sector, in those situations, you know, I'm a very, very different person from those in the room, and therefore behaviour and what people say, they just think it's acceptable. For example, at my last board meeting, somebody said, "Oh, somebody put she, her. What's that all about? Pronouns? Yeah, what's all that rubbish about? What's, you know, what? I don't even understand it." They just think it's acceptable to say that, whereas in our sector, you know, you wouldn't see men saying or talking in the same way, and it's still, it shocks me really when I am in those private sector boardrooms around how little thought is given to anything other than shareholder price, not even value. Yeah, so I think for me that's we're in our bubble with where we work. You know, of course there are issues that arise, but you have more enlightenment in terms of men, in terms of what they, within the culture of where they work. But you go outside of it into many different arenas and you see a huge difference, you know, vast difference in terms of what was acceptable to be said at a table and not. That doesn't mean, I think some leaders have still got those qualities of being more bombastic, more, you know, loud in the way that they act, and get decisions and get things done.
Mm.
I suppose in my case, obviously it's the borough that I represent is Waltham Forest. So it's a different thing altogether, in that our leader is a woman. Yeah, we have a female leader. And the only thing that's noticeable, I would say, is that in terms of the councillors, and I'm just talking about maybe the Labour councillors, we have 44 Labour councillors, but there's a lack of representation maybe from Black, I say Black as in Afro-Caribbean and Caribbean councillors. There's a lack of representation of those people in our council. But we're hoping that with the elections coming up in the 5th of May, that things will change. But there's definitely a lack of representation there. In terms of the board, well, as the mayor, one of the things that I do is chair council meetings, which includes both our Conservative and Labour councillors. And, you know, and I feel proud and honoured, you know what I mean, to be sitting there as a woman of colour, and actually chairing that meeting. And if anything, if anybody does anything that's out of line, my stare alone is telling you, don't even go there. Yeah. So I do, you know, I do get it. You know, male trying to be, you know, pushy and, well, this is what I want and this is how it goes. But we have rules, you know. And what you do is just go by the rules. Yeah. But you're going to get it. You're absolutely going to get this alpha male attitudes, and it's something that you just have to deal with. I'm not saying that you have to accept it, because no, you don't. But in everyday life, you just have to deal with it and be strong and just know that you can deliver.
Thank you. And the questions come through, which is, I think, yeah, most of you, Madam Mayor. So what's the most effective way for you to understand the needs of the community? And a lot of our audience members work in the housing sector, so I think that that's probably why that's relevant.
Hey, oh, well, that's a tough one. So as a counsellor, I get residents contacting me on a daily basis regarding housing, say, for example. And the issue is always because it's always to do with they're probably in a 1-bedroom property and they've got maybe 3 children in there, you know. And so they come to you because they think, well, you know, you'll be able to just fix it for them, you know. But I think a lot of it is empathy. You just have to have a lot of empathy with people, listen to the concerns, whatever it is. But I always, when I speak to residents, I will listen to what they have to say, but I always make it clear to them, I can't promise you anything. I'm going to be real here. I can't promise you the world. I can't. Yeah. But I will do my utmost best to get down to the bottom of what the issues are. Okay. So I can't guarantee that, yes, you're going to get a 2 or 3 bedroom house, but I can guarantee that I'm going to get the Peabody to have a look at the leak that's coming from your ceiling. Do you know what I mean? Or yeah. Those kind of things, or the mold in your bedroom, etc. So yeah, so it's having that listening skill, not just with housing, but with everything. Yeah, because these are the people who vote to put you in that position, and so you just have to listen, and then from that, surprisingly, other things can come out of it. In that, sometimes you find housing was never the issue in the first place. Yeah, but because of your listening with the community, that's where you can support and, you know, and take it elsewhere.
Thank you. I think that's really a valid point. Okay, so the next question that's come through is, what is your view or experience about talent development programs specifically for women?
Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because do women need different talent development programs? I don't think they do. But do some women feel more comfortable looking at having programs with other women because they feel they can be more open around, you know, as they go through that? Then I think that is the right, that does work. So, you know, I think people have to work out for themselves whether they want to be on a program which is with other women or which is specifically geared towards women in terms of their development. And so I think it's really about looking at the program, what's the contents of it, how is it going to be run, and making sure it's right for you, because I don't think it will be right for all people, but I think there's definitely a place for women's development programs in order to deal with some of the issues around confidence, around being able to speak up, around, you know, those kinds of issues. So I do think it depends on you as an individual.
I would have to say that, and I totally agree with you, Geeta, it really does depend on the individual. But I do believe that, yeah, we need, there ought to be development training schemes for women, because there will be some women where that will absolutely suit them. Yeah. Now, if I look back on my younger self, maybe that would have suited me then, but not now. Yeah. Now I'm in with the big boys. Yeah, so to speak. Yeah, because I'm not gonna let me being Black and female hinder me. Yeah. So you know, it's about the mindset, isn't it? Yeah. And of course, over the years we evolve, and I'm more experienced now, and I know what I want, and I'm gonna ask for it. Yeah. But obviously, back when I was in my 20s and 30s, and I had a young child, it was a different thing altogether. So having specific training just for women to bring you in, to hold your hand, to guide you, yes, I welcome that. But my thing I would say is, don't let that hinder you. Go for what you want, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. Let me give you a typical example. When I worked for the University of Westminster, I remember approaching 2 senior female managers. One was the HR director for organizational development, and one was a dean of a school. And I wrote identical letters to those 2 females saying, look, you know, I need guidance, I need support, can you help me? The dean did not respond, but the head of HR development, organizational development did. And she said, I don't want to just be your mentor. I'm going to be your professional mentor. Yeah. And she guided me. If you want to get into HR, this is what you need to do. Yeah. Now and it's because I made that effort to approach them. Had I not approached her, maybe I would still be behind the desk, sitting down, or shy, not knowing what to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know we're not all the same, but my advice is, from today, think about it. Just ask the question, because you never know where it's going to get you. I had a meeting today. I visited a school today. As the mayor, I visited a school today. And then from that, guess what? I'm likely now to be a school governor for that school. Just by saying, I'm interested in becoming a school governor, how do I go about it? So I'm just putting it out there.
Thank you. So we're closing today at 5 on the dot. So I'm just going to have time for one more question, I think, before we wrap up. And somebody has asked a question, which I think is quite a nice note to end on as well. So which women are your inspirations and why? I think it's an International Women's Day classic, but we like it.
Well, on a personal level, my mum, who is she's coming up to 89. She has brought up a family on her own. She survived war, moved countries, kind of the lot really, and has never had any money, and is the most positive person you can imagine, and has friends who are the age of 2 to the age of 100. She just sort of gathers people around her, and so she's my inspiration, because whatever happens in life and whatever has happened to her, and she's had huge sadness and loss in her life, she just carries on, and she's so strong and incredible. So she's my personal one. I was thinking about who've in work and life, who have I got inspiration from, and I think actually I was thinking about Sharon White, who's the board chair of John Lewis, black woman, and she's come in. Everybody will have their assumptions about her as a woman coming into that role, and this is our most treasured of stores, isn't it, John Lewis? John Lewis is, the treasured of stores, and she's achieving a turnaround, which I don't think people expected. So I admire her gumption for doing something different, for coming in, for taking that on, and for delivering, where lots of people were not sure what she was going to do. So I was thinking, as a modern day sort of inspiration, I'm very inspired by what she's done.
Thank you so much. And Madam Mayor, we've just got 30 seconds or so. If you could.
Okay, I'll be very quick. I think very similar to Peter. Obviously, my mother is my role model, has always been, and long may it continue. But if we want to go international, I would definitely mention Michelle Obama, because I love her statement, when they go low, you go higher. And of course, Oprah Winfrey, she's all about business, and that's me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. Please do scroll up and see how to join the gender networks, both at Peabody and Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing.
Thank you, Ellie. You've been great.
Oh, thank you.
Well done.
Thank you both. We really appreciate your time, and have a brilliant rest of your day.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And nice meeting you, Geeta. Bye.
And you. Bye.